on the way out to cut down a big oak tree that's creating a problem with the rentals. It split in a windstorm, and we're afraid that it might fall on the rental house and crush it. So we're going to go out and take care of it, although I hate to do that. I've spent almost an entire lifetime protecting those oak, and I hate to lose one, but sometimes it's necessary. On the way out, we see a little mountain beaver that something has had a hold of and let it go. He's been roughed up a little bit, but I think he's still okay. So we'll look at him and then we'll be on our way. These are a little animal that live up in the hill, and they do resemble a beaver somewhat, although they're much smaller. And they dig dens up around the roots of the trees up in the forest, and something has dug him up and roughed him up real good, and I don't know what it was. Whatever it was that had him, when they heard us coming, they made good their getaway, and the little beaver, mountain beaver, is sure glad of that. He's a cute little guy with a little face and sharp little claws, and he's not very big, and he doesn't run very fast. They're more or less nocturnal, and so you seldom see them, although we have a few times. But they're around and come out at night and feed on plants and other things they can find to eat. We see their dens all the time around the base of trees, but only a time or two have we ever seen the little critter because he does his stuff at night. We reach the place where we're going to cut the tree, and see the split tree is there, and the crew is already on hand, and they have a slingshot thing. They shoot a rope up in a crotch in the tree, and then they can pull a bigger rope up to use for a safety rope for their climber to climb up. This tree either had to have a climber or a great big crane, and so this crew that we got had climbers, and these guys must have nerves of steel to climb these big oak trees way up above the forest floor and cut them down from the top down. He's having just a little trouble getting started, but once he gets started, he goes up that tree just about like a monkey. This looks to be a very dangerous job, and it made me kind of nervous just watching him go up these giant trees and start cutting pieces off. He will climb clear up into the canopy of this giant oak, way above the forest floor, and start cutting it down a little piece at a time. And then he'll either lower them down or throw the pieces down. Right now, he's just reached the spot where the big split is in the tree. And if it were going to split again, it would probably do it here, but it looks pretty darn solid there. I think the piece just split off and fall down. It was a huge piece. It's fortunate it didn't hit anything or anyone, because it was heavy enough it could have crushed something. This tree was probably damaged during the ice storm, and so it's probably just a matter of time till the other piece comes down. So we're going to take care of it before it comes down in the middle of the night and crushes someone. One step at a time, he slowly and gradually climbs the tree, and he does have safety ropes here. We see him working with the safety rope all the time, but still, it must take nerves of steel. And up the tree he goes, one step at a time, and you can barely see him. He's so high up in the top of this giant oak tree. Whatever he gets paid, I'm sure that he probably earns every penny of it by doing this sort of thing in a tree. Not everyone would be able to go up high like this in a tree with only a rope for a safety device. I like to get involved in things that's going on and do some myself, but this time I'm just perfectly happy standing with both feet firmly on the ground, holding only a camera. He has a little hand saw that he saws some of those pesky little limbs off. A lot of those came up because there was some damage from that ice storm to them. And so they show up all over the tree. And a lot of times when a tree has a bunch of them, it means the tree is dying. One step at a time, he skillfully and carefully picks his way up the trunks of this tree. And when he gets up there, there are many tops to it that have to be cut down. Some people on the ground have ropes attached where they can send him a chainsaw and various things he needs. They just pull it up on ropes up into the canopy of the forest. It's normally the younger, smaller guys that climb the tree. I guess the older guys probably wouldn't be able to get up the tree, and if you were too heavy, it might be too much weight for the tree. I would think this is the kind of job that would give you nightmares. It's gotta be scary up there in that tree, and every tree is a little different situation. But this would be a great job for an adrenaline junkie to climb up in these trees. And they have constant contact with the ground crew, and they'll send him up whatever he needs by rope. And these ropes are sent up in the tree before the climber ever goes up. They have a really strong slingshot, and they have a little package on the end of it. They call it a monkey's fist, that they shoot up through the crotch in the tree, and they seem to be pretty good at hitting it. Halloween is just over now, and the decorations are still on some of the trees. They'll fire up the chainsaw down on the ground and get it warmed up, and then up it goes, with one hand over the other, and they'll pull it right up into the canopy where the tree cutting guy up in the tree can get a hold of it and start his job.
Let it fall. I'm so confused about that. No, I'm confused about that. Oh, see, I didn't practice, so that's Yeah.
One thing, there's a great view of the area from up here in the canopy, and off the limbs come one at a time. Some of them he can let fall where there's nothing below, and the others have to be hooked to a rope and gently lowered down. He works on one branch of this tree at a time, cutting off all the branches until it's almost naked, and then letting down great huge chunks. The larger trees are about 150 years old, and this area out here, a big share of it was covered with these oaks when the pioneers first came in and settled it. And so many of them have been cut down, and this is one of the few groves that are still growing. And we've had this property for 60 some years, and I've been fighting all that time trying to save them. So we only take out one once in a while when it's a problem tree where it's going to fall on something or hurt someone. The Native Americans took care of these oak groves because they were an important part of their food. They would gather these acorns in the fall and have a really good food to last them through the winter. And some groves would produce a lot of acorns while others wouldn't. So not all the trees produce every year, but some years they have a really good crop. When a limb is cut free from the tree, it sways considerable. That would be pretty frightening for the guy up in the tree, I would think. So he really hangs on careful. The only thing that would worry me is if that tree would break off from the swaying after the branches. My big concern is if the tree breaks off, there's nothing to hold the trimmer up in the tree and down he would come. But fortunately, these trees were good solid oak. When we farmed this property, we used this tree grove for cattle and sheep for the protection of the trees. With the cattle and sheep running on this property, there were very few little trees that made it. But now, since there's no cattle or anything, the acorns are sprouting and new little trees are coming up. And so I want to keep this same group of trees growing here. So I'll dig them up as they get big enough and transplant them to the spots where I really want them to grow because I want to preserve this oak grove. There's not many of them left here in the valley, and this is one of the larger ones that are left. It takes considerable skill that you probably don't learn overnight for this crew to rig up all the lines and everything to pull some of these big branches down and to guide them away from hitting something that we don't want them to hit. The crew was very accommodating and very friendly, but there was a language barrier, so I couldn't really ask them a whole lot of questions. They didn't understand my language and I didn't understand theirs. This green oak is extremely strong and extremely heavy. So when one of those branches goes down, it weighs more than a man can carry usually. In the early 1960s, we had a terrible windstorm through here. It happened on Columbus Day, and anyway, several of these big trees were blown down, and so I hooked the tractor onto them and hooked a pulley on them and pulled them up in a tree and backed a truck under it and took them to a little mill that does that sort of thing and had them sawed into lumber. And from that lumber, I built numerous things. One of them was an 18-foot cabin cruiser boat. The framework was all made of this oak, and then the rest of the boat was made of plywood. One piece at a time, we're taking this giant oak down, and that is the hazardous part of this giant oak, and we'll make something out of it. We have a little sawmill, so maybe we can saw some lumber from it. I just don't want to see this oak wood going to waste.
No, papi. Que estoy a la torre de la polea, güey. De abajo se mira bajita, acá está altísimo. Espérame. ¿Tú me dices? Sí, espérame. ¿Se fue? Hacia la parte. ¿Cuál es el papel que quieres?
Chainsaw ready to go, huh?
Gente que le sobre tan calibrado. ¿Encendedor, Johnny?
How long you been climbing trees? A lot of years?
Que tener poder.
He may have said all his life.
Que tampoco le quedó. Que no pueden decir.
They're getting the big saw ready to cut the main trunk of the tree down. It's all sharpened and nearly ready to go, and ropes on it to steer it in the direction that's wanted. Next, the main trunk of this giant oak tree will surrender to the roar of a chainsaw. Cut in the tree to steer it in the right direction, and then with a little pulling from the truck out on the road, this tree will be ready to go down after he cuts the notch out and goes around back and does the back cut.